All right, everybody, welcome back to another Snapper Chat podcast. Today we've got another Golden Door Award winner, guys. We're super stoked for this one. This is Mr. Oakland Goodsell, which is a pretty cool last name, being in door-to-door sales. So, Oakland, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate you for coming on. We've been interviewing people in the door-to-door industry, just asking for their best advices, struggles they go through, how they went out there and hit the top 1% in the industry, which is what you've been able to accomplish this last year. And you did it in your third year. So I'd love to hear just kind of like what your background's in and how you got to the point where you're able to get a Golden Door this last year.
Yeah, so I grew up in Salem, Utah, just kind of regular childhood, played a lot of basketball growing up, and then I ended up going on a 2-year LDS mission for my church. And right before I left on my mission, I had heard that my cousin had made over $500,000 in like a 3-month summer doing door-to-door sales for his uncle's company out in Texas. And I was like, that's the craziest thing ever. Like, I couldn't even comprehend that because all I had done is worked at like a sandwich shop, just kind of a local sandwich shop making like $9 an hour. So I went and I served in Canada for 2 years during COVID, during the pandemic. And sorry, just one sec. I served my church mission in Canada for 2 years, and it was always kind of in the back of my mind. And when I got home, my cousin had started his own company and ran it for 2 years. And he just took me to a Mexican restaurant, told me that he wanted me to come out and sell with them, and the rest is history.
It's crazy, bro. I think it's interesting too, the whole being on your mission for 2 years and then going into door to door. Like, no doubt you had a little bit of edge there
Mhm.
because you're just talking to people, right? Did you do door to door when you were on your mission, or was it just talking to people at the gym, social media, stuff like that?
Very little because of COVID. So Canada was super strict. I did knock for the first like 3 months of my mission. There was a day I remember I actually knocked in my mission president, like the guy that was like over the mission, he told everybody that we had to knock at least once in minus 40 to just say we did, like in like extremely cold weather. So I remember I knocked once in the winter there, and then COVID happened and it was like illegal, like we couldn't do it even if we wanted to. So it was mostly social media contacting. But it's funny, I was actually like a pretty lazy kid growing up, and then that was the period where I kind of learned how to work hard and like got more people skills and all those sorts of things.
What a time to do it too during COVID and everything like that. If
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been COVID, I'm just curious, like what is the door approach when you're knocking somebody's door for your LDS mission?
It's like super not practiced, I felt like. At least for me, like when I was a new missionary, like it was just kind of knock on the door, they open it, and we're just like, hey, we were wondering if you wanted to hear a message about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And then they say no 99% of the time, and you just go on to the next one. So that's kind of how that looked. Was also a brand new missionary with another brand new missionary with like no training on how to do that. So that's kind of what it ended up looking like. But
Would you role play like objection handling for how to get past their smoke screens saying no, or
we
you
we
just
role
go to the next door?
we role played a lot on how to teach and like going through lessons, but we didn't ever role play like going like door to door and like if somebody gave an objection, like we never like practiced those sorts of things. Like I think that if I were to go back and do it now, I'd probably have a lot
You
more
would
of
have killed it.
yeah. Hopefully, I would think so.
You you would have got way more people into the kingdom, bro. I,
Yeah.
I never I never did like a LDS mission, but right before I got into door to door sales, I did a trip in an RV to every single state capital. I went to in 93 days, bro. I went to 48 states, and we have a nonprofit that's all about mental health. And so we were interviewing people in the streets, asking them two questions. The first one was, how are you impacted by the pandemic from like the aspect of like mental health? And the second one was like, what's one thing about your state that like nobody knows? And so I kind of felt like I was a little bit building that muscle that you
Yeah.
built on your LDS mission that made you successful and me as well in the door-to-door industry. So I think that was definitely a leverage that I had, and sounds like same for you. What would you say that was like one of the biggest things that helped you to be successful in door-to-door, or what other maybe experiences did you have in your past that you think translated to you being successful in door-to-door? Because I know that you mentioned that you were a little bit lazy and like that kind of helped you out to
Yeah.
build that muscle. But what were some experiences that you think you had from your past that translated to you being successful in door to door?
Like to get into something that's more specific, when I was on my mission, like I started to take it really, really seriously, and I would like take like teaching the lessons like super serious, and I would write down on my lesson plan like everything I would say, and I would write it down over and over again in the morning. It would be like 6 in the morning, and I would write down my lesson plan, and I would say, what can I take out of this? Like how can I make it more simple? And I would learn everything I could about the subject, and then I would just try to like really, really strip it down. And when I've been the most successful selling, it's been the same thing. It's been me. I've written down my pitch hundreds of times, and I've always just been stripping it down to just make it super, super simple. Because in my opinion, like the less you say, the more you sell. Like simplicity sells, and like you want to know more about the subject. You want to know more about your product or about the sales process, about soft closing, about the psychology of sales, and you want to say less because you know more. And that's the same thing that's what I learned on my mission, because I wanted to know these lessons like super thoroughly, know all these details that I would never tell somebody while I was teaching them, but I could if I needed to, and then just say as little as possible and just be able to explain it super clearly, if that makes sense.
And you got to that point by repetition, which is like Tom Hopkins says, the mother of all learning is repetition. And so for you, how many accounts again is that to get a golden door in Pest? Is that like
So it's
650?
$650,000 worth of revenue or 1,000 accounts. So I sold 815 accounts by like an average of $800 a pop.
Wow, that is impressive. Now, with that, did you have the same pitch every single knock pretty much?
Yeah, it was similar. It was pretty. Yeah, it's pretty repetitive that way. It's similar at each door, and then obviously you kind of map it differently per situation, like depending on objection or their personality type.
So before the objection, do you mind just kind of sharing like the sauce with us? Like what was your, how did you, when they opened the door and they said, hey, can I help you? Or hey, what's going on, dude? What would you say? What was your pitch?
So I just say, hey, sorry to bug you. My name's Oakland. I'll be really quick. I'm just the one that's been doing work for 16 or so of your neighbors. And then from that point, I try to show them a list of everybody that I'd sold in their neighborhood, because I was selling 40 to 50 accounts a week. So I'd usually have like a pretty long list, and then I would start to take them through it. I'd be like, this person or this guy, he's like the doctor that lives kind of by town hall or whatever. And then that was a big portion of it. I would go through bandwagoning, and then after I take them through the list, I just say, "Hey, we're taking care of such and such insect issues." So whatever, and I would tailor that to whatever the town had been seeing. So if it was scorpions, then I would say that, or wasps, and then I'd say, "Hey, since we're in the road, up the road, it saves us a lot on travel if I can fit you in with all of them. So we're cutting the cost down." And then I just go into my pitch.
What was the biggest top two objections that you get? Probably like, I want to do it on my own, or now's not a good time.
Yeah, I think that it's a lot of people saying that they want to do it themselves. They have a different company. Sorry, I'm just trying to think. The funny thing about pest, I know it's a little bit different than solar. You knock for 4 or 5 months, and then you kind of rest. So I'm a little bit rusty on it. But yeah,
How
I
long have
think
you
that
been, how long have you been out of the field? If right now it's
um,
December
August,
20?
I hit it August 30th, like the August
So you've been out
30th.
of, so you've been out for 4 months.
Yeah, just kind of hanging out. But yeah, I think it's mostly those two. Like I have a company or I do it myself, and then a lot of the objections are probably similar across the board, no matter what you're selling. Solar alarms, like it's, oh, I'm not interested. I don't have time. I need to talk to my spouse. The spouse is a really, really big one.
That makes sense. I think the spouse one's a big one, whether it's like, hey, my spouse handles that, or like, I got
Yep.
to talk to my spouse. How do you overcome that one, Oakland?
Every single time, like, so say you're the husband and you say, hey, I need to talk to my wife. I smile at them and I say, hey, wives are the ones that love this the most by far. And they like it because it keeps the house looking really new and nice. And a lot of pest guys, they go through, I don't know if you've heard of like the racking process. It's something it's like a sales style that I don't really subscribe to at all, but it's like resolve, ace, close. So every objection they get, they resolve it, then they drop the price or they add something and then they close. And I don't really do it that way. I always try to go through like a hit and run process. So I hit the objection, and then I try to have them forget that they brought it up, if that makes sense. And I change the subject to something that they care about. So I would say, hey, wives are the ones that love this the most. Or if it was a woman, I'd say, hey, the husbands are the ones that love this the most. And I would say like a reason why. And then I would go over to talk about whatever issue they were having and not bring up the objection again. My goal is for them to forget they ever had that objection.
That is such a good one, dude. Yeah. I mean, you could even do that in solar too. You could do that in any industry. Like wives are the ones that love this the most. Husbands are the ones that love this the most. And then you just agree, respond, move on. Well, I don't know if that's agree, respond, move on. That would more so just be like, you acknowledge what they're saying
Mm-hmm.
and you respond to them. And then you
Yeah.
just ask another question, something that so they feel heard versus
Yep.
just like overcoming it. Like you overcome it, but then you go into the next thing. So
Yep.
you just
And
handle it. Like Grant Cardone talks about, it's like they're not really, it's not a real objection. It's just a complaint. So
yeah.
you don't need to handle a complaint. You need to go into like what is actually the thing that's gonna make them be a sale or not, right?
Yeah. And then if they say it again, I always say, hey, well, obviously I don't know your wife, like, and you know her better than anyone. Like, what do you think she'd say about it? And that's where I go on the second. That's like the second step. If it doesn't work on that first one, I would say 70% of the one-leggers I sell, though, I get on that first go.
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
That's good. So you've been in it for 3 years. You got a golden door your third year. The first 2 years, how did you do?
So I did 160K in revenue. On the rookie pay scale, I made like 70 grand in my first summer. And that was in like 3.5 months or so. Then my second summer, I recruited a couple guys and I went out in March. I decided to do 6 months. I did 425,000 in revenue and I knocked for 6 months, had a team. I made like 300 grand about in total. And then this third summer, I did 650,000 in revenue and led a team of like 10 guys.
Impressive. So what do you do in the off season to prepare to be able to go out there and hit a golden door? And yeah, I got another question after that. But what do you do in the off season to prepare, or do you literally just chill?
Right now, I've been hanging out a lot. And honestly, each off season, I give myself a lot of time to just like go on dates and like hang out with my friends, and we take a lot of trips. But I also, in between my first and second summer, I would read every single day. I would watch a lot of Alex Ramosi videos, Grant Cardone, like Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, all the guys. And then I would write down my pitch. And I think, like I said, I would write down my pitch. I would make changes. I would take things out. I would just try to see where I could improve it. I never make like massive adjustments, just like small tweaks. I've never changed anything big from my first summer to now. And then my second off season, and then I think one of the big things that helps me is training reps that I'm bringing out, like rookies. Like I'll role play with them a bunch and get them prepped. And I think that's when you have to understand it well enough to teach somebody else. That's one of the main things that helps you get better. But I think through my second summer, because I knocked longer in my second summer than I did in my third summer, and I sold more in the third year. And I think that I learned a lot in that second year, but it just took me a second to kind of process that, like internalize all the information. Like I went through a lot of growing pains through my second summer, and then my off season after that, I had a couple of months to just internalize all of it, and I made a pitch manual, like I made a training manual and it was more for myself at the beginning, but I ended up sending it to the whole company, and that was basically the extent of my preparation. And I found it to be actually more effective than when I was reading and watching videos every single day.
Yeah, it's just such a different lifestyle than I'm accustomed to. Probably 99% of like America is accustomed to. Do you
Yeah.
get bored? Do you get bored in the off season? Do you ever find yourself just like, dude, I'm bored, like I need routine? Or is it just like how is it?
No, not really, because all my friends sell too, so they're all not working as well. And in Utah, like Utah's kind of like the hub of door to door, at least in pest control. Like like there's way more pest control reps here than there is anywhere else. So a lot of people do that. But I can be as busy as I would like to be. Like I take a lot of recruiting meetings. I'm still in the office every single day, and I take
Oh,
a
you
lot of
are.
recruiting meetings. Yeah, I'm in the office every day, probably not more than 2 or 3 hours a day, but I have meetings every day. I run trainings every day, and then I go to the gym, hang out with friends, hang out with my girlfriend, all those type of things. Like, so I don't really get bored. We take a lot of trips. We go to New York, we go to Florida, Vegas. Like, we're traveling a lot as well. So if we ever get bored,
It's awesome.
we just go somewhere.
Hop on a flight. And then talk about what is the routine of a Golden Door Award winner during the on season? Is it like wake up, cold plunge, sauna, workout, like crystal
Yeah.
balls? Like what is the morning routine of a Golden Door Award winner?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm pretty simple. I don't like sauna. I don't work out during the summer like I do during the off season, but I don't really work out during the summer. This summer there was times where I would like do push-ups in the morning, but I wasn't even as consistent with that as I would like to. Just because I would like to clear everything out and just make it as focused on just selling as possible. I would wake up at 7 o'clock every morning. I would just make my bed, pray, read some scripture for a sec, like read from the Bible for a sec, and then I would write down the 10 biggest goals I had in my life. Not all of them were sales related, but that's kind of something I would do every morning. And you're supposed to be able to do it by memory. Then I would jump right into area planning from there. I gave myself about an hour to plan area for everybody else and like 30 minutes to plan area for everybody else. And then I would give myself 10 minutes to decide where I was going to go after that. And then for 20 to 30 minutes, I would look at my area and say, hey, if it's not going well, I'll move here. If it is, I'll kind of adjust here once I run out of HUD there. And I would look at my whole day. I'd run a morning meeting at 10 o'clock, usually would go for about 30 minutes, try to be on the doors by 11, 11:30, and then I would go till 9 or 9:30 at night and with no break or anything like that. So I would just eat breakfast actually. This summer I only ate once a day. I would like fast for 24 hours every day. Mostly because I gained like 35 pounds in my second summer and I didn't want to get fat again, but also I slept a lot better when I wasn't eating right before I went to bed. And then I would get home at like 11 o'clock and then I'd just go right to bed. Most of my team, they would watch Suits or Netflix or something. I would just kind of wave to them and go to my room and wash my face, go to sleep.
Was that hard going to bed not eating, or was that fine?
It was fine. Right now, I couldn't do it, but if I'm selling, I don't really think about it.
You're exhausted at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Like you just want to pass out, especially it's like 11 o'clock. You've been going since 7 a.m. Like
yeah.
yeah, and you just.
Texas heat and all the things too. Like you're just worked. Yeah.
Mhm. Interesting. Any other bits of advice in there? Like, I mean, I don't know, mindset things. I think a lot of people talk about like, yeah, you got to have your skill set on point. You got to have your attitude on point. But any other 1% improvements that you think you're looking to make this next year, or just anything that you would have as advice for people watching this right now to be able to go out there and hit the golden door? Because it sounds like you just kind of like stuck to your routine. Like you woke up and attitude of gratitude. You're in the scripture. Like for me, I read Proverbs, right? Every day. There's 30 of them. I read those every month. But you woke up at the same time, you went to bed at the same time, right? Like you had your routine dialed in with the food. So like routine's a huge part of it. You're talking about, you're working on your skill sets and you're watching like the greats, right? Les Brown, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Dale Carnegie, right? You're reading all these guys and you're working on your pitch in the off season so that it's perfect. You're talking about plan to fail or, don't, if you don't, what is it like like you plan to fail or something like that, right? So it's like everything in there is pretty like you just stick to that process and it's like you stick to that process and you stay consistent. Like you're gonna probably go out there and get a golden door, right? But are there any other bits of advice that we haven't talked about that you think you would have for other people watching this that want to go out and get a golden door?
The biggest thing for me, so I was pretty obsessive about wanting to be one of the most skilled. And I think that that's super important. A lot of guys in pest control, and I think in solar, that it's a good thing, but this isn't as much of the mentality. But a lot of guys in pest control, they're like, hey, it's not the pitch. It's not the pitch at all. Like, it's not your skill set. Like, it's your mindset or your work ethic. And those things are important too. But it's a lot easier to work hard if you're at 10 sales than if you're at one. It's a lot easier to work hard than if you're killing it than if you're not. And it's a lot easier to believe in yourself and to have a strong mindset if you're killing it as well. But to answer your question, the biggest piece of advice that really helped me right before the summer I think it was right before the summer. I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast actually, and he was talking to some comedian from New York. His name's Sam Morril, um, and they were talking about how in sports the worst thing you can do is think. Like you train in the off season or you train before the game, but you just gotta like let the muscle memory kind of take you from there once you're in the game. Or I think they were talking about UFC fighters. Like you can't be thinking about your form or your footwork. You just have to go off of your muscle memory. And for me, I really applied that this year. Like if somebody didn't buy, I was just like, oh, like they weren't my guy, and I would move on to the next person. And the only question I'd be asking myself, I wasn't saying, hey, am I saying things right? Am I in the right area? Whatever. I would just be saying, hey, is this a buyer or is this not a buyer? And if I decided they weren't, I would leave as quick as possible. And if they were, I would close them like 90% of the time. And I just focused, like I just trusted that I knew what I was doing, basically. So I wasn't overthinking it.
I love that. That reminds me of like you've heard of Patrick Bet David, right?
Yep. Yep.
There's like the number one book that he recommends everybody read, and it's called Power versus Force. But the essence and like what it really teaches is like exactly what you talked about right there, Oakland, which is like yes or no, is this the best thing that I can do with my time? It's like, well, yes. Okay. Yes or no, is this guy a buyer? It's like, no, okay, I'm out. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of times people, they struggle with like, I don't know if it's the right thing or not. Like maybe it's a buyer, maybe it's not. And they're just wasting time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, we have a long time, but like not really, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so just like, you know, making those quick decisions of like, yes or no, this is the buyer. Yes, I'm going to lock in and close it. I've got the confidence. I'm more sold than he's sold that this is going to be a sale. So I'm going to win. Right. And we're going to help him because we believe
Yeah.
that if like, we're not going to help him, like we're screwing him over. Right. And if it's not a sale, it's like, hey, I'm out. Hey, God bless. Have a great day. I got to go. Got an appointment.
Yeah.
It's fine. Right. So I think that's money, bro. Craziest day in door to door. What was your craziest day in door to door this last
Like,
year, last 2 years?
like in terms of like, oh, it was a big day, like I sold a lot, or like something crazy happened.
Yeah. Something crazy happened.
There was a day we went on a blitz and we were out there for 3 days, and I was with one of my buddies that I was trying to bring out. He didn't end up actually coming out for the summer, and he was brand new, knocking in his area. I just finished training him and let him go, and then I went and I was knocking, and I had sold like 5 accounts. And I came back to my car. This is just kind of a funny story, but I came back to my car because I needed to use the restroom. And how I am, like I looked up where the nearest gas station was to go to the bathroom, and it was 4 minutes away. And I was like, that's 4 minutes there, and it's 4 minutes back here. I was like, I don't want to take 8 minutes out of my day, which sounds ridiculous looking back. So I went to the restroom like in a Chick-fil-A cup. I peed in this Chick-fil-A cup, and I accidentally like dumped it all over my leg, and I was like freaking out. I was like, what am I going to do? I was like, do I need to run to Walmart and buy a new pair of shorts? And I just like decided, I was like, oh, well, whatever. I dumped a water bottle like on my leg, and I went and sold 5 more accounts, or it was 4 more accounts with just like piss all over myself. And we were in a rental car because it was a blitz, and it was just smelled horrible after. And it was a pretty funny thing that happened. But I told it a lot actually throughout the summer as like a story, like, hey, I just don't stop. Like, and like a lot of you guys, you wouldn't be worried about the 8 minute drive to go to the gas station and come back. But like, I don't take breaks no matter what. Like I avoid that at all costs. And there's not anything that there's a lot of excuses that you guys make to take breaks that you don't have to. Like if I can knock with piss all over myself, then you can knock if your girlfriend's calling you, or if it's a little hot outside, or if it's raining.
Well, the good news is probably like when you were knocking, like the bugs, they smelled the piss on you, so they were probably all
Yeah.
clumping up around you, dude. That was probably like I would actually maybe recommend people. So you meant to pour the pee cup out like in the grass or
Yeah.
whatever, and you poured it on yourself.
Yeah, I was just a klutz, and I dumped it
Yeah.
on my leg, just kind of like from the knee down. Like I just like,
So it didn't hit your shoes.
I think it did. I think it did. Yeah, and I'm like a super like clean freak too. Like
Oh yeah,
I can't
OCD.
I can't deal with that type of stuff like at all. But I was just like, I'm I felt more strongly about the fact that I needed to be like selling, so I just
Yeah.
back out.
Hey, dude, like the tests you go through, your testimony someday, right? And
Yeah.
definitely it's a good story to tell people of like, hey, like we stay in hood, like stick and stay, make it pay.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
That's funny, bro. All right. Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on,
Yeah.
and sharing advice. Obviously you're going to be at, Door to Door Con getting the
Yep.
Golden Door this year. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Last question for you is, obviously we talk about knock doors to buy doors. We talk about creating passive income. We talk about, the next generation's greatest entrepreneurs. Like I personally believe are going to come from this industry of door to door.
Yeah.
So what kind of investment strategies are you looking at doing? Is this something that you were like conscious of when you first started 3 years ago? Or is
Yes.
it something that you've kind of like realized over the last 3 years and now you're in the point where you're like, hey, I got to start making investments? Because like so many times, because we've recruited hundreds and hundreds of people, like they just like they come out and they blow it, right? Like they don't
Yep.
make the smart investments. I was in real estate before I got into door to door, so it's like that was always where my mind was at. But for you, I'm just curious, like what has been your strategy and your experience with investments, or
Yep.
have you just blown it all?
I knew that I was going to invest. Thankfully, my parents are pretty well off and pretty smart with their money. And my cousin, he had bought 5 houses before I got home from my mission. And he had also done some hard money lending that outside of the real estate properties, he was making $100,000, like $110,000 passively, not counting his rental properties. And all of his rental properties were about breaking even. Um, just with how the real estate market is here in Utah. So I wanted to copy him. And my first summer, I made 70 grand. I lent 50,000 of it away at a 15% return, and I was making $600 a month. So I pretty much I drove out to Texas my second summer, like paying overdraft fees because I gave everything I had left to this company to get those returns, and I hadn't got my first check yet. So I was like I was well, not maxing out, but I was putting like my gas on a credit card to get to Texas the second summer because I invested literally everything that I had made. After my second summer, I made 300 grand, and I put the majority of it into lending. So I got up to making like $2,500 a month passive, and then I bought a house in Vineyard where I live now, and it was a 5 bedroom house. I ripped out the kitchen and the basement, put 2 more bedrooms in, and I rent it to my buddies. So there's 7 bedrooms in the house now, and that one it's about even right now. But I want to refinance and kind of get it to the point where I'm probably paying like $1,200 to live there because I live in the master. But if I were to move out and then refinance, I should make a little bit of money on it. But it's more about the asset, obviously. But that's kind of what I've done this far. Everything I do, I tried to just copy what my cousin had done. I didn't like go and get into things that I didn't really know about. I just followed in his footsteps. So
Young Elon Musk, bro, that's epic. I mean, he what got I don't know if it was like I think it was like $70 million payout from PayPal, right?
yeah,
And then he put like 50 of it. I don't know what the numbers were, but he put it into Tesla and SpaceX, right? And then like literally had to like borrow money for rent and was like sleeping on like friends' couches or something crazy like that,
yeah.
is like what they say. And so that was you, bro. I mean, that's epic. You go out there, make 70K, and then you put 50K into an investment, and then you're getting like overdraft fees. Like, dude, epic story for you to be able to tell. How old are you two, by the way? You're like
I'm
23,
I'm
24?
23. I'm
Okay.
23. Yeah, I just turned 23 during this summer. It's funny, actually. The company I lent that first 50 grand to, they just paid me back today. So I've got to figure somewhere else to put.
Nice.
Which no, it's not nice. I wanted that passive income, but I've got to
Yeah.
figure somewhere else to put it. So yeah, I'm 23 though.
Nice. Yeah, that's epic. And I'm sure you've got mentors and you've got places that you could find to put that money. But yeah, dude, it's definitely inspiring hearing that story. There's not a lot of people at your age that are doing stuff like that. So dude, hopefully you're proud of yourself, man. I'm sure your family is too. And again, just at 23, like I'm excited to see what you do in 2025. Are you going for another Golden Door again?
Yeah, my goal is to do more than what I did this last year. I haven't set exactly what my goal is going to be, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind of tying that down in the next little bit here.
Okay. Awesome. And then last question, are you going to be just going out there and ripping personally, or do you also want to build your team out? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, so my team did pretty well this past year. A lot of guys in pest control, they try to build big teams and like master the craft and sell a lot, and then eventually get to the point where they're just managing. I don't know if that's the long term goal for me. I like knocking more than I like managing, but I did have a lot of reps that I had 10 reps. The lowest performer out of all of them made like 35 grand in like the 4 month summer. And then I think the average was right around like making 90 grand. I had two vets that both made around $200,000. So I've got guys that are capable of managing. So right now it's just kind of getting them to recruit, like, because you can only recruit so much on your own and build so much on your own. So I'm trying to push them to kind of bring guys in themselves as well.
Love it. No, it's impressive. Last question. What would you say was like the biggest distinguisher, differentiator between the guy that made like, 35, which is still awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Like for a lot of people to go out there and make 35, 40 grand in 4 months, right? Like
Yeah.
not bad.
Yeah. For sure.
But then for the guys that made multiple six figures, what would you say if you could pick like one, two, or maybe three things that separated them? Was it skill? Was it the routine? Was it hours? Was it mindset?
Between my top rookie, the two that made 200 grand, they were in their second year, but my top rookie made $120,000, and the guy that made 35,000, I actually think that the guy that made 35,000, like in my opinion, he has an argument for having been the hardest worker on our team. What I think that David did really well, the one that was the top rookie in my office, he he noticed how simple I kept it when I was pitching, and he really, really focused on that, on like not saying very much, listening to the customer, qualifying, and he. I think that he just did a better job of copying and pasting what I said and did than anybody else did.
That's where it's like you don't need more information, you just need more implementation. So it's like he
Yeah,
implemented it and
yeah,
like put it into action. And that's where it's like we tell a lot of people, it's like, hey, dude, like get off this podcast and go out and actually do it. Like you
yeah.
can watch podcasts all day, but like at some point, like you got to buck up and just go out there and like take action, like build the thing that you're striving to build. And that, so it sounds like that's what he did.
Yeah, I think that like it was a lot about copying and pasting, just doing exactly what he was taught, and then his focus was incredible. Like that's one of the biggest things with door to door. Like if you can like be like really really focused on like just small periods of time, I guess, like, and not be focused on the big picture and not be getting like distracted and not be thinking about other things. Like there's a lot of guys that work really hard, but they have a hard time being completely locked in like mentally. I think that his focus was like really impressive. I think that's one thing that really set him apart as well.
Well, dude, again, appreciate the nuggets, epic stories. I love hearing about the investment strategies. I love hearing about your craziest day in door to door. That's epic, epic, epic. I love the one liner, like, hey, like wives are the ones, husbands are the ones that love this the most. And again, 800 accounts, as a 22, 23-year old, that's freaking impressive, bro. So, congrats on getting your golden door. Oakland, thank you for putting us all on game. We'll put your Instagram here so everybody can follow you. And,
Great.
guys, you know that we're doing this every single week, interviewing top reps in the door-to-door industry like Oakland, people that are one percenters. And so like take this, use this as inspiration, go out there and go for the golden door status this next year. Because Oakland's going to be doing it, we're going to be doing it, and hopefully everybody watching this gets inspired to go out there and just take freaking massive action and get around people like Oakland that are going to help you to level up. So again, Oakland, thank you very much, brother. We appreciate it, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Let's go.